Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist, and the only thing that exists is film. I fucked that up. Anyway, I'm Jay, here with Cole, as always, and we're back again, finally. And today we're going to be doing Sleeper, the Woody Allen film from 1973, the sci-fi, comedy, drama, dystopian, futuristic film. So kind of interesting take on, the new Hollywood.
Yeah, when we were saying about how New Hollywood affected all genres, we'd be here forever if we were trying to do a film from each one. So this is a good one in a way because it covers several at once, so that'll help.
Time does not exist. The only thing. What is it again?
The only thing that matters is film.
The only thing that matters is film. I was close.
All right, we'll get some merch made up with it. Trademark.
But yeah, this is my first time to watch this film. I haven't ever seen it before.
Oh yeah. It's technically, I guess, Woody Allen's fourth film, but even by then he wasn't like a big deal or anything like that. I think this is one of the films that was sort of a breakthrough for him and starting to get known. Yeah, when we talked about New Hollywood and how everything, every genre had its innovators and stuff like that. Within comedy, I think it was sort of dominated by Mel Brooks, and then probably Woody Allen comes in second after that, I would say. We talked at length about doing a Mel Brooks film, some films that we both really like doing, but I don't know. Like I said, it had less to do with Brooks versus Woody Allen for me, in that I just sort of remembered this film and I was like, that should be early 70s, and it was 73, and I just thought, and like I said, I like that it covers a couple genres. It's actually kind of ambitious for a comedy in a way. I mean, nowadays spoofs are pretty common, but they really weren't back then. When people think of like a sci-fi type spoof, they'll think of Spaceballs, which came out quite a bit later. That would have been like 87 or so, because it was largely a spoof of Star Wars and other stuff. So I mean, and I think in this fall coming, there's going to be a new show that Seth MacFarlane's doing that's just a big like Star Trek spoof, and that seems like it was a long time coming. Somebody to just do that. I mean, although the film, what was it? The Tim Allen film, Galaxy Quest, does sort of do that effectively itself in a way, but now there's that. But anyway, this is going way back to 73, so when, sci-fi wasn't the dominating presence, it would be after Star Wars, we'll say, particularly after Star Wars and Alien. But, in the 50s and 60s, it was definitely sort of a B-movie genre, not good effects, not good didn't have leading actors or anything like that, so it wasn't really a genre that was taken too seriously. And that started to change in the latter half of the 60s when, some of the more serious films about it came out, most notably probably Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. That would have been, I think, 68. And also in 68, whether it was supposed to be serious or not, what turned into a big phenomenon was the original Planet of the Apes movie. So I think both those movies sort of brought some legitimacy to sci-fi. And you would start to see, just an increase in sci-fi movies coming out, and maybe some with more serious themes, bigger budgets and such. Although still, it really took Star Wars to really get it over the next hump. But still, by 1973 when this film came out, it wasn't exactly an old genre, but it was only now having some of it. What I was going to say, it only really found its legs by now. So of course it was ripe for parody, and that's where this movie comes in. It's a lot of things at once. It's an homage, it's a parody, it's full of allusions and stuff like that. And it's a lot of things to really balance. And I don't know. I think it's pretty successful in that. In that it's hard, especially when you consider that the movie. I mean, we'll get into it in more detail as we go on. It's got some fairly serious themes going on in here, and I think they managed to explore some of these themes without sacrificing the humor, which is kind of a difficult tightrope to walk, so I respect it for that reason, too. But, I'll ask you your thoughts on it in a second. I was going to say, this is a film I'd probably seen 5 or 6 of Woody Allen's, big, well-known films before I ever saw this one. It was about, I'm not sure how many years ago I saw it. And I remember I saw it and I kind of get a kick out of it. But now, having seen it again, I kind of like it even more than I initially did. So I was wondering what you thought of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Woody Allen fan.
All right.
There are quite a quite a few of his films that I do enjoy quite a bit. But yeah, this one I enjoyed. You know, it's a lot of slapstick in there, which I could take or leave that. It was the the Woody Allen one-liners that I think really brought it home.
Right.
The his style of comedy. But you said he wasn't really on the map yet at this point. Would you say?
I'd say he's
Andy Hall put him on the map.
Yeah, maybe as like a serious force. He's certainly an emerging force by this time, but I don't think it would have been until at least the mid '70s that people were in general or sort of aware, or people could talk about having a style. Like, you need a body of work, right, to have a style. So by this point, and this movie also in its ending kind of even sets, even though they're not connected, thematically it does set itself up for some of the films to follow. Love and Death, for instance, which has Diane Keaton again. In some ways, it's almost sort of a spiritual successor, although the plots are completely different, just because of some of the themes and some of the subjects that they tackle, and some of the back and forth that goes on between his character and her character.
Wow, so they had quite a few collaborations.
Yeah, and this is the first, I believe.
I didn't realize that she was in Love and Death.
And I think this is the first, and it is kind of surprising now in retrospect to look back to see how quickly things came together and how well it worked. I mean, obviously it's subjective. There's people out there that maybe thought it would take them, that personally themselves believe it took them a few films to get into a rhythm and stuff. I think it's kind of there right away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even today, like all these years later, like when we have these movies where you have like sort of a comedic duo, it's almost always homogenous as far as the sexes goes. It's like, it's two guys or it's two girls. It's very rare to see a sort of a comedy duo or whatever you want to say where it crosses, where it's male and female. So, I mean, it would have been groundbreaking at the time, and to this day, it remains a pretty rare thing. It's hard to come up with other examples of the trope. And like I said, I wasn't really thinking about that the first time I saw the film, but seeing it now, I'm pretty impressed by how well they carry it off. It takes about the second half of the film to really see Keaton's comedic talent, because at first she's just sort of playing sort of a bland kind of character, but then when she has her change, you get to see some of that stuff come out, and she plays off Woody Allen very well, I think.
Yeah.
But
this film was I think it went quite a bit over budget because of some reshoots, but it was very successful, and I think ended up making a good bit of money.
Yeah, like I said, it was ambitious, and maybe it doesn't completely fulfill its promise, but I mean, I don't know. It comes pretty close, considering all the stuff it wants to cram into a fairly short movie. It's a pretty brisk, like 87 minutes, keeps moving. And like you said, maybe it didn't need the slapstick. I don't know. I don't mind it. It probably isn't carried off quite as well, but I get what he's trying to do. He wanted to fit in some sort of like tribute to the silent films of old. And as far as how that goes, it's fine. Actually, I don't think there's any problem with it itself. I think it's a little overused. I think there's one, maybe even two times where they could have cut it out, so there's only a few of them. It seems like there's maybe one or two too many of them, those sequences. But the sequences themselves, I think, are good. So yeah, for those who don't know, it imitates us. Whenever there's sort of some physical action about to happen, like a chase scene or something like that, it reverts into sort of the style of a silent film, where we don't have dialogue, although somebody might quickly make a joke and then go back to it, or sound effects, and yet we just have the action in front of us with the soundtrack going, blaring there. And the soundtrack is very present in this film. Again, it's supposed to be sort of an homage to that, and got ragtime jazz going on, which is actually, although it sounds just like any ragtime jazz, it's like one of those things where it all just sort of sounds like the same song. These particular pieces were composed and performed by Woody Allen himself. In his admiration for somebody like Charlie Chaplin, he's the only filmmaker that did the same thing that Chaplin did, and he accomplishes in this film, in that he wrote, although he co-wrote, directed, stars, produced, and performed music for. He and Chaplin are the only filmmakers to do that so far in a film. And I mean, it's almost cheating with the music, really, because it's just sort of repetitive stuff, but still it counts.
I think it works.
Yeah, it works. It's a cool juxtaposition, you know, because we've got sort of a futuristic movie, but then when we get into the action, it's sort of old-timey and retro and supposed to make us think of, you know, that older stuff. And it's pretty cool. But, so the title Sleeper comes from the H.G. Wells story, The Sleeper Awakes, which has the same sort of premise. I think that story was written in 1910. It's about a contemporary man who goes to sleep and wakes up a few centuries later into a society that's obviously vastly changed and also is sort of run by an oppressive, controlling government, and also gets caught up in a revolution. And obviously, the big one, there's 1984 stuff all over the place. But it's neat to see sort of that kind of take on a 1984 society where it's not all doom and gloom, where they're poking fun at it, because yeah, that sort of stuff is ripe for parody. Another film I love would do a cool job of that too later on, Brazil in 1985, the Terry Gilliam film, but still it must owe something to this film. You know, the idea that we've seen going back as far as probably the late 19th century fiction, where we've got some sort of future with an oppressive, all-encompassing government and people's, you know, freedoms being stepped on or eliminated or whatever by this force, and the merging of sort of like one thing that's really happens in this movie is we get sort of almost a holy trinity as they merge sort of government bureaucracy with corporations and religion, and that all comes into play as the movie goes on. But what's sort of fun about this movie, and again something that you would see later on in Brazil, is like, but what if, you know, that oppressive government with all its bureaucracy was like actually pretty inept, you know, and it makes for a pretty good comedy.
Yeah, that worked really well, and you know, throw Woody Allen in the middle, and it
sure,
really,
yeah,
really turns loose. You know, this is Diane Keaton, of course. She's, I believe this came out after The Godfather, but I think some of it was filmed before The Godfather.
Oh, okay.
That's how it went.
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that.
Had to get her back for some of the reshoots. I think maybe while she was still working on Godfather, finishing it or whatever. But it was released in between Godfather 1 and Godfather 2.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, kind of put her on the map pretty quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. And it sort of carved out the path that she would take with two very different filmmakers, and like Coppola and Allen. You know, she would sort of have ties to them throughout her career, and you know, the starting point, yeah, here in the early '70s.
She has a very striking look to her. I think that it's kind of interesting. It's a very unique look, and obviously works for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably what helped break her into the business, right? I mean, we talk about talented actors and stuff like that, and it's true, but it's also true that, you know, there's some actor, you know, perhaps down the street performing at your local theater that can pretty much do anything these people do, honestly. You know, maybe even better, but the fact is they didn't get the breaks, or they didn't have the look and stuff, and so Diane, you know, you use everything you've got. And like you said, you might think, you know, she's sort of a standard pretty girl, but no, there is something a little different out. It makes her stand out a bit. And a movie like this actually sort of, like I said, gets to showcase some of her versatility, and that she does get to do some comedic stuff, and it carries off quite well.
Yeah, I liked all the stuff when she was trying to get Woody Allen to have sex with her in the Orgasmatron machine, and no, I'm pretty good for sex. I got a PhD in blowjobs or something.
Yeah,
like that.
That's right.
That cracked me up.
Yeah, she says something like, "Would you like to perform sex?" And he's like, perform. I don't know about a performance, but I'd be happy to rehearse with you," or something like that. Like, the movie is, you know, full of really clever, fun one-liners, like we said, and I think they all really land. Yeah. You know, and sometimes I was trying to think about how I would explain this, because I don't know. Sometimes I think anybody can relate, where you have a specific idea about something, but then when you're trying to actually articulate it, you don't know how to make other people understand it, and maybe it's just something in my head. But the way I saw it was, I thought like some of the one-liners and stuff, they weren't even necessarily clever. They was just like exactly what it called for. Because the truth is, like, for a lot of comedies, particularly sitcoms, but for movies too, you know, I'll criticize them for having lazy humor. I'll say, you know, they just went with the easy joke there. They didn't go for something clever. I actually think in this movie there's a few times where it's not exactly lazy, but they went with something very simple, but it fits perfectly anyway, if you know what I mean. And I think that's actually pretty hard to do. In that, like, you know, clever humor is great. I love clever humor. But it is cool, too, when you can just have something that's really straightforward, and you realize that, like, trying to substitute with something clever actually wouldn't be any better. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
A lot of that sexual humor and jokes and stuff is really cliche and kind of tired at this point.
But yeah, back then,
a lot of it was still fresh.
I mean, that's one of the things that got Woody Allen noticed was, like, he wasn't afraid to bring up sex and tie it into things and stuff because, you know, as human beings, most of us, except for the very small percentage that are asexual, you know, sex is a dominating force in our lives. And yet, even today, you know, it's something that, like, oh, we don't talk about. Or if you do, there's something crass or terrible or whatever about it. I've always found, in all of his films, I liked that he's just sort of honest about it. The stuff he brings up, and he says a lot of the stuff I think that sometimes people, you know, have thought themselves, but, you know, they wouldn't want to tell anybody. Because especially when you look at somebody like him, and he's made a career out of being, you know, pretty self-deprecating and stuff, because, you know, he's Woody Allen, he's not some big tough leading man or anything like that, but he knows his strengths and he knows his weaknesses and stuff, but he's happy to, you know, point out his foibles, etc., and stuff like that. And yet the fact is, yeah, we're all sexual beings, and sex comes into almost everything we do. So it's kind of nice to have a filmmaker, actor, whatever, that'll have characters that will actually bring it up and actually talk about it, and in not sort of a fake way, but in more of a realistic, honest way. And it's fun to see in a movie like this. It's funny you bring up the Orgasmatron scene, because it occurred to me, like, isn't it weird to think that 20 years later, Sylvester Stallone would do a movie like this and have almost the exact same scene? Where, like, he's there, he's the man out of time, he's been frozen, and then the woman just says to him, "Hey, do you want to have sex?" And he's, like, taken aback by it, and she's like, "Here, we use this weird machine." Like,
let's do sex.
Yeah, like, Demolition Man has, like, almost the exact same scene between him and, what's her name? Sandra Bullock. And,
I never would have put that together, but you're so right. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. It's funny stuff. But yeah, well, yeah, like we said, this whole man out of time thing is, you know, not entirely original, but he does something fairly original with it. Yeah. I don't think I'm up to her performance, I'll prefer something you like. But, I'm just trying to think of where to start. Yeah, in his own character, he's supposed to be, like, a part-time jazz musician named Miles, okay, obviously, and also a health food store clerk, or he owns one or something like that. In 1973, the idea of a health food store was probably pretty novel, and I think that's one of the reasons why they kind of make fun of it, because one of the things they do was, like, when their futures established that, like, most of the, like, health trends of, like, the early 70s or even now, like, were completely wrong. It's like, well, we know now. Like, at one point they give him yeah, they give him a cigarette, and he's just like, "Oh no, I don't smoke." And they're like, "What? It's tobacco. It's great for you. It's like the most healthy thing for you. Inhale it completely," and stuff like.
Oh, that's
like I said, hilarious. Like, exactly, and, like, that's not particularly clever. It's just sort of an inversion, but it's funny. You know, it's funny because it's true. Like, because the main thing I would say that Alan is doing in this movie is, you know, satirizing his own society.
Right.
And that's a big part of it, you know. Again, it wasn't really even until the 80s that people really ramped up this whole health thing, you know, and people would start going to gyms and stuff. But the 70s was sort of the beginning of it, and you would see it get later on, especially with the success of a film like Pumping Iron, you know, which was 77, and then you have the gym craze in the 80s and all that stuff. But all this stuff is, you know, all this stuff's a very gradual process, and we can see that it's already starting to take hold here in the 70s, and we got Woody Allen sort of, you know, pointing it out and making fun of it.
I like when they give him something to eat, and he eats it, and he says, "Oh, this tastes awful. I could have made a killing off of this in my health food store."
Yeah, which you know, it's still sort of the same thing. It's just like, oh, this tastes really bad. It must be really healthy for you. Let's buy a ton of it. You know, like people still pretty much have that mindset, I think. Yeah. So. Yeah, there's all sorts of good little asides like that, like too many for us to actually even mention, even though it's a short film, because, like I said, he certainly had his misses throughout his career, but when he's on, he's on. In a movie like this that moves so quickly, the humor and stuff is pretty much rapid fire, which is cool, because sometimes it's fun to just absorb a movie that way. And at the same time, I still feel like the movie does have some interesting, somewhat serious things to say. You know, there's I realize that all these years later, some of that stuff doesn't age as well. Particularly, you know, there's a part where... Okay, well, one thing we have to let the audience know if they haven't seen it, although, again, we try to urge you guys to see them before we talk about them and do our spoilers. But anyway, is that this society, it's about 200 years later, but they say that there was a time, maybe about 100 years earlier, where there was some sort of nuclear incident. And the point is, they're trying to say, is like a lot of like their records are wiped out. So they only have sort of a vague idea of the history. So one of the things the scientists do when they meet him, when they wake him up, is they're trying to get him to clarify some things that they can't figure out. And it's kind of funny. And at one point they're showing him like pictures of some various, you know, important figures of the 20th century, and he very quickly, you know, gives a little synopsis of them, although, you know, none of them are exactly that accurate. And then there's the part where they're talking about Nixon, who was in office at this time. This isn't after, this is during. Right. And, you know, and they say, you know, he must have done something awful because everything's been wiped from him and stuff like that. And he's just like, oh yeah, he did something really terrible. And then he said something like, oh, you know, whenever he would leave on foreign business, would leave the White House, you know, the Secret Service would go and check the silverware, which is pretty much a gutsy thing to do. I know nowadays it's you know, it's very commonplace to just slam the president, but this is the early 70s, and I can't really think of movies beforehand that did that, would slam the president, because that would have been, you know, a very un-American thing to put that in a movie.
Some, you know, cement shoes on or something like that.
Right, so... On one hand, it shows, you know, that he's fairly bold, but on the other hand, it also shows that he's not quite as bold as you thought, because it's showing sort of the sliding scale of cynicism that would come into the 70s, right? It would get really bad, where people, you know, by decade's end, particularly Americans were very disillusioned with a lot of things about their country, you know, government and stuff like that, and that hadn't really been seen before, and this is sort of before that, but I do think it shows you kind of where it's heading, because, you know, finally it's sort of acceptable to take a shot at a president, and most people aren't even going to mind, because a lot of people were very upset, you know, about Nixon and stuff. So, on one hand, it seems groundbreaking. On the other, well, it is, but on the other hand, it fit well into the context of the time. But still, I don't want to take credit away. He was taking a shot there that you probably would imagine certain filmmakers would just sort of avoid. They'd be like, oh, better not do that. Again, this is before Saturday Night Live or anything like that, which was really, I think, the first thing in America to really show on a grand scale, look, it's okay to like make fun of these things and stuff. I mean, obviously people always did, but that didn't get on TV or in movies. And so this is a few years before Saturday Night Live kind of starts to normalize it a little bit. So, right. Yeah, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but certainly new.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, very close to groundbreaking, because,
right.
You know, it was, you know, a change of the times along with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now, you know, making fun of your president is become acceptable, as opposed to, you know, you never say anything wrong at all.
Yeah, I bet you some aide or somebody found out and told Nixon he was pissed, because he was that kind of guy. Like, he did not he did not like people talking about him and stuff. So you can just figure he just added Woody Allen to his like really long enemies list.
I was trying to think of someone else that he did that to, that I just heard recently. Yeah.
And he probably had something anti-Semitic to say too, because Nixon's stance on Jews is kind of well known too.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, like I said, it goes so rapid fire. There's so much going on. It's even you have to mix it. It's funny. Probably the most societal stuff is when he first winds up in sort of the middle class or whatever they are home, and it's really him, you know, sort of ripping apart kind of the idle rich of our own society, particularly those that want to be artists, but more because it's like they don't have anything better to do and they think it would be cool. So we've got, you know, we've got her character, Diane.
Is it Luna or something?
Yeah, yeah, Luna. She's living this life along with the rest of them, where they don't have to worry about anything, and their every need is sort of taken care of, and they have all the distractions, that you could want. They've got what is it? Some sort of narcotic that can be absorbed through the hands, that they're all passing around. It's like a sphere, and they're all getting giggly and getting high off it like that. They've all got whatever distraction or their needs taken care of. They've got the robot butlers, and of course that's how he winds up there. He's hiding from the government. That's after him, posing very stupidly, very obviously posing. But of course it's another shot at government that they can't tell the difference as one of these robot butlers. So he's assigned to this home, and we get a look to see what sort of the people on the other side, because he was supposed to be, he was awakened specifically so that he could be used as a weapon for the resistance, the underground. They want to overthrow this oppressive government, and they want to use him because since he hasn't been born in this era, there's no records of him, there's no fingerprints, there's no whatever identification stuff they use at that time, like photographs or retinal scans, any of that. He'd be completely off the record, and they want to use him in that way. But anyway, then when the authorities come after him, and he very kind of adroitly, very haphazardly and quickly disguises himself as one of these robots, and they don't even notice it, and then he's assigned to this home. So yeah, we get a look at these socialites. She's a socialite and sometimes poet. We get to hear one of her poems, which is really terrible and banal. But of course, her friend tells her how great it is. But then he points out like a mistake she makes in it, where she says something about she said a butterfly turning into a caterpillar, and she's like, oh, just that bit. It's just that it's caterpillars turn into butterflies. It's the other way around. And she can't even handle that little criticism. She starts freaking out and crying. She's so upset. It's because that's what it is for like these wealthy, coddled people that never worked a day in their life or had to worry about anything, and now they can't even handle a little bit of criticism, even if it's construction. Familiar, huh? It sounds very familiar. Yeah, it's funny how so many of these films are, the things I said back then. It's so true nowadays, perhaps even more so as it goes on. But They don't have a care. They can just get high and do all this stuff, and then they go all out to swim. But they live these sheltered lives, but they don't actually have anything meaningful to say or to contribute. So this is where he's really going hard, taking a stab at these people. And it's kind of funny because Woody Allen himself was almost on the precipice of becoming one of these people, right, before he went in another direction. So he was probably aware of that too. He was a sharp guy, but yeah, I mean, and also, I guess the overarching sort of theme of the movie is more a shot at government control and bureaucracy, saying how that, if that interferes, how it upsets creativity and how it damages art. That's, if there was one, overarching theme for the movie, that's probably it.
Yeah, did you notice the guy with the swastika t-shirt?
Yeah.
Pretty obvious thing.
Yeah. But, yeah, I know. On the one hand, it fits well into the movie because the idea is, like, they've lost all sorts of history, so they probably don't even know what the Nazis were. They just find this symbol, and they're like, that's a pretty cool symbol. But, yeah, again, for us that know what it is, we're just like, oh, yeah, okay. Look at these rich idiots. What's that?
That is like a Nike swoosh or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the future societies will... Yeah, future societies will just adopt it, which... You have to wonder about, because the truth is, the swastika is a very old symbol, right? It goes back many, many centuries and was used by different cultures, particularly Sanskrit stuff in India, but you also had Nordic cultures, which is the main reason that the Nazis used it, was because of its use in Nordic symbolism. You can find it in some of that old stuff about... those countries like Vikings and stuff like that. But it's true these things change, but then you have to think that the way the Nazis use it is so powerful and definitive that there's no saving it. Right. I can't imagine, unless something like what happens in the movie happens, where a whole bunch of history is lost, at some point somebody's going to start using the swastika again and say, hey, forget the Nazis, we're trying to just use it. Like, it just feels like, to me, it's lost. There's no reclaiming it.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I remember seeing who was that British guy? He was a BBC guy, and he would do like documentaries where he would like talk to awful people. And well, anyway, I don't know. He's done a few of them. I'll look him up. He would often put himself in really awkward or sometimes dangerous situations. I can't think of his name, but he did a few different BBC documentaries. And, you know, he talked to the Westboro Baptist Church and people like that. But there was one where he was doing one where he was talking to, like, white supremacists. And there was, like, this family, and there was, like, this blonde mom who had her, like, 2 little blonde daughters and stuff. And she's, you know, teaching them all this hate and bigotry and stuff like that. And at one point, she takes him to the beach, and he goes with them. And she's getting her to, like, her little daughters to draw swastikas in the sand. Like that, right? And he's just like, well, why swastikas then? If you don't think, if you're not saying like the Nazis are great, and she's just like, oh, it's just an amusing symbol. There's lots of shapes and symbols out there that are amusing, and you're thinking, yeah, that would be a pretty big fucking coincidence that you just think, oh, I think, you know, like it's like the most transparent lie you've ever heard. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know if there's any saving the swastika. Same thing with Hitler's mustache. I mean, Charlie Chaplin, you know, it's too bad. That's probably why he made the film The Great Dictator. Not because of all the atrocities that Hitler did. He was mostly mad that he ruined his mustache for everybody. But anyway. So we have him going on the run again, but this time he drags her into it. And, you know, she's his unwitting accomplice, and she's happy to, you know, sell him out at the first chance she gets. And in between this, we have a few of those comedic, silent film-esque slapstick scenes, which are done well enough. They're okay. They're not overly long. Like they don't go too long, so I'm fine with them. You know, they're probably only about a minute long each. They don't overstay their welcome. They know what they're supposed to do and go on. And they do have a kind of amusing escape for them in that at one point when they visit some other people's houses. I can't even remember why she makes him do it, but remember she asks for like one of those flight suits, like that people wear if they're going to go up into space, and she makes him put it on.
She's
saying
trying to
like
set him up, so like when she blows that up, he won't be able to run away.
Okay.
I think is essentially what she's trying to do.
Okay, because she's trying to convince. She's saying, "Oh, it'll be a good disguise. They know what you're wearing. You have to change your clothes." He's like, "Okay," and then yeah, it winds up being like this big inflatable thing, and then we have to add to the slapstick. You know, it's kind of like the equivalent nowadays of like seeing people fight in those big sumo suits. Yeah. You know, so he's doing that and falling down and stuff. But then they do have sort of an amusing getaway where she uses him as a raft and they go out on a lake. It's pretty dumb, but I don't know. I enjoy it.
She's riding him like a boat.
Yeah. She's just like, I can't swim. And he's just like dumbfounded. You can't swim. And he's just like, on the other hand, wait, I can't swim. Which totally fits with his character again. You think, yeah, he's the type of character that did like as little as possible as far as these types of things go. Because at first, yeah, it's like, oh, you stupid future bitch with your insulated society. I can't believe you can't swim. Then it's just like, oh, I can't swim. I think it's a cool little moment. Yeah, there's some light banter in there about God at one point where she's, you know, asking him if he believes in God, and she says she believes in sort of and he says something like, you know, I believe, yeah, I believe that we live in a universe permeated by intelligence, with the exception of some sections of New Jersey. Which, I don't know, still hits the mark. I don't think that's aged.
Yeah,
but
you know, like I've said before, a lot of, you know, comedy's very subjective, and
sure,
you know, it is very easy for things to get outdated. Us watching something now may not be funny at all to something 50 years ago.
Yeah, there's definitely a few things, like I said, although I try to tell people whenever they watch films to keep historical context in mind, although, you know, I try not to do that too much because I know, you know, people want to enjoy films. They don't want homework. They don't want me telling them, you know, you're too dumb to appreciate, you know, so I do try to keep that on the back burner in polite conversation, but on a show like this is where I can just get away with it completely. so yes, keep historical context in mind. It will help enhance your enjoyment of the movie. That said, neither Jay nor I believe the movie has, you know, completely become dated, and in some ways it's kind of prophetic in some of the things it says about society then and how they've only become more so now. You know, the question he's posing here is, you know, how different is this society he's giving us from the growing level of government control and manipulation that was going on in our own society, and, you know, that's sort of continued to this day, and so I think, again, it is still quite relevant.
Absolutely.
And like we said, or at least again, people can disagree with this, but the way I think is, all like these sorts of themes and questions are brought up, but there's no break in the humor. There's no soapbox moment. There's no time where the humor stops dead, so you can get some moralizing. It's all done tongue in cheek, and it keeps moving right along, which is harder than it sounds, honestly.
Yeah, and as far as Woody Allen films go, I would prefer that over his more heavy-handed stuff.
All right.
More hard dramas.
Yeah, when I was first thinking about, describing this film, I was going to say how Woody Allen is sort of, I don't know, more known than anything, but, mostly known, one of the things he tackles in all his films, and usually carries off pretty well, although he's certainly had his misses. He's had such a great big body of work, he's had his misses, is like relationships, specifically relationships between men and women. I was going to say this movie's not as much about that, but it still kind of is, in a way. Once you get into the second half of the film, it still covers that stuff, even with all this other, 1984 Big Brother stuff going on in the background. We still have the spotlight on, a relationship between a man and a woman, and again, some of the stark honesty that goes on there. When we talk about New Hollywood, again, this is another one of the things that's going on, not just in comedy, like we're saying, but in dramas too, where we're starting to see relationships that are a little less glamorized and more realistic, and that point out, things from real life and things that people can relate to, rather than just always giving us a romance that's either super romanticized or idealized. And usually, even then, when they give us a romance that has, problems, they're usually big cinematic type problems where it's a love triangle or I don't know, some other kind of more fantastical, more dramatic type thing than some of the more mundane details, right? Most relationships, a lot of the time, the problems, they're more mundane. They're less interesting. They can be devastating, but that doesn't mean they're dramatic or interesting. We talk about drama, but that's kind of a play on the word, right? You have a couple and they get into a fight about something. That's drama. They're making drama out of something that probably is in itself is not that dramatic. And so movies besides this would finally start to depict relationships more like that, where it's giving us more of an honest depiction. And again, I think it's kind of cool that they can carry that off in the backdrop of a science fiction comedy spoof going on. But that is sort of Woody Allen's main strength, is this depiction of relationships and how people can get along, but also find fault with each other and clash. Which, the first time I saw the movie, not to jump ahead, I was a little surprised by the abruptness of the ending, but now it makes a little more sense to me when I think about it in that context.
It was basically, you love me, I love you, roll credits.
Yeah. But it's just like, because on the one hand, it makes fun of the trope that we still see to this day, where we've got two people in a movie, so exciting things are happening, maybe dangerous things are happening, they're caught up in something, so they fall in love, even though we're thinking, well, that doesn't really make much sense. It's just like you were thrown together by some sort of, dramatic thing, danger or something like that, and so in the moment you're all caught up on each other and it's exciting and you're attracted to each other, but then then we watch the movie and we think, well, once the credits roll, probably the relationship falls apart because it's not based on anything sort of real and substantial. This movie does sort of the same thing, but at least they outwardly acknowledge it too, because it's like they go on the run together, and there's all sorts of reason why, she would be attracted to him even though he's not the leading man type or anything like that, and it's because of what they've been through together. But there's even a point towards the end of the movie where they even analyze that a bit, where it's just like, and she's just like, well, it's just been scientifically proven that, all relationships, men and women, just get on each other's nerves anyway, which is a good save for her saying it without him having to say it.
It's a known fact that men and women can't be in long-term relationships or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a scientific fact.
Yeah, because they'll just get on each other's nerves. And you see that happen in this movie, but by the time we're in the final act and they're on their mission together, they're doing a ton of bickering, mainly because he's upset that she's been sleeping with some other guy, even though before that she was sleeping with somebody else too. Of course, he'd been brainwashed, which is an interesting turn too. I don't think we're expecting that. Is that like when they get caught, she managed to escape and they catch him. And they don't do what we think they're going to do. They don't kill him. And even though they do brainwash him, it doesn't seem like it's that bad, really. they do brainwash him and they integrate him into the society, but he seems reasonably content. But again, is that Woody Allen just saying, well, this is the trick they play on you? You know, they pull the wool over your eyes. They make you think you're content because, while, you know, you're actually getting your rights and stuff or freedoms are getting stepped on, but they feed you just enough drivel to keep you content. So maybe he's sort of saying that point. Because he seems reasonably content, but again, he's not too free. He's sort of a cog in the machine going on, and he's just given these little small creature comforts that are supposed to placate him. Which relates to today, too, for sure.
Doesn't he? There's like a machine that he confesses his, I guess, sins to.
Yeah, that's actually that's a takeoff that was in THX 1138.
Oh, really?
If you remember the beginning of that film, when we're showing Robert Duvall's character in the world he lives in, at one point he goes to a thing like just like that, where he basically, it's like some sort of weird confessional where he confesses to, like, I don't know, the corporation or whatever it is he works for, and he does the same thing. It's pretty funny. And the only reason I would have known that is because I kind of recently watched some of that movie. I would have probably forgotten that, so it's got to be that. And again, it comes back to what I was saying about Woody Allen pointing out how things like government, corporations, and religion are all starting to blend, and how that can be a dangerous thing. And he's poking fun at it there. He's talking about how he once questioned his supervisor, and then he's talking about how he would sneak off with one of his coworkers and they'd have sex. And he's just like, I know that's against the rules. I hope you forgive me. And then it just sort of beeps and prints out something that I guess is his pardon.
Yeah, it says something. I forget what it said. Like, not was it absolved or something like that?
Yeah, it was something like that. It's like, okay, absolved. You know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And again, I think it works in today just as well as it did in the 70s. We have a lot of that going on, you know, making the point that when you wrap those things together, particularly once you get religion into the mix, you're getting sort of a morality that's forced on us, that's a very oppressive kind of morality, and it's actually pretty disingenuous too. And, you know, we can all relate to that. We've all seen that, where whoever it is, there's somebody above us dictating to us, you know, telling us what is right and wrong, telling us what is good and bad, telling us what is moral and immoral, and you know, no good ever sort of comes from that, really. And before anybody misunderstands what I mean when you're going to say, well, we should have laws and stuff, yeah, I know, but I mean the stuff that really gets into people's lives, because the idea is, well, really, to me, the idea of morality is that it comes from within. It's not. It's something innate. It's not enforced. So when you get enforced morality, you know, it's again, it's disingenuous, and it leads to a slippery slope where it's all going to fall apart anyway. Yeah, where if we get to a society where we've got the powers that be, they're dictating down to us like that, it's just going to blow up in everyone's faces.
Right.
And yet, then and now, there's people out there, I think, that don't see it that way, and are kind of happy to be dictated to or be bossed around. I don't want to pick on any specific groups, but sometimes, you know, I think I've seen you see a lot of that in something like the Mormon Church, where, you know, I don't want to say anything that Mormons are good or bad, but I do feel like there's a bit of a complacency there, at least in some sects of it, where, you know, they're just sort of happy to have their morals force-fed to them by their religion or the hierarchy there, and to me that doesn't seem right. I don't want to say how people should or shouldn't live, but I just mean, I think Woody Allen saw those sorts of things too, and is pointing it out in the movies, that when you're having your morality, force-fed to you from above, like, how moral is it really then? It's not coming from within, it's not your own choice, it's something that you're just being told that you have to abide by, and, you know, taken too far, it can be quite oppressive.
Yeah. Can't follow anything blindly.
Yeah. But like I said, as it gets into this sort of stuff, we got some of extreme social reflection going on, you know, the comedy doesn't slow down. It's light and makes its point and moves on. It doesn't hit us over the head with anything like that. It's like, oh, this is sort of funny, and here's the funny thing about that, and then we move on. You know, there's not a whole bunch of repetition or yeah. Probably, I think, kind of the most interesting stance is how he points out the opposite spectrum, because he's kind of showing how neither side is perfect. Though he's saying, on the one hand, you know, how bad it is, the idea of a world that gets all that stuff swept up together, so getting sort of a totalitarian state, and you know how that's bad, of course, so that's oppressive. But then he also does, when her character gets away and she's taken in by the rebels, he does sort of poke fun at the other side of it too, particularly Marxism, saying how, like, yeah, how this is, you know, in theory good and idealistic, but how it's kind of ineffectual in a way. You know, we've got people that have sort of the right idea and good intentions, but the way they want to go about it probably isn't very effective. Which, yeah, fits in well, again, with the 70s and some of those groups that had Marxist ideals. It's like how he has a soft spot for them, and he understands where they're coming from, but he thinks that probably their methods aren't going to actually affect the change that they want. That it's well intentioned, but it's unrealistic. This sort of counterculture that I'm just repeating myself now, but yeah, they have good ideas, and they're coming from a well-intentioned place, but the way they're going about it isn't actually going to affect the change that they hope to. But Marxism is actually something he would touch on in lots of his films, if you're familiar, but I can't really think of another one that does. I mean, even in one of his earlier, I think his first film, what was it, Bananas or whatever like that? Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. But yeah, so what I like about the plot is, like, it's not at all predictable. You don't really know where it's going to go, and it's kind of funny that, like, he's the one that winds up being brainwashed, and she gets to change too, because she's like, again, this socialite that is completely coddled by society and thinks everything is great, and now she's comes to the other side of it, and she becomes indoctrinated into that other world, and she adapts to it very quickly. You know, it's only like it takes a month to, like, completely turn around her thinking on it completely, where she's ready to you know, join them and be part of their cause, and she's living in the woods now and relying on herself and stuff like that, and she takes to it quite well.
Yeah.
So then they rescue him and get ready to try to deprogram him, and it's so weird, and I really like it though. So they have this idea to deprogram him. They're going to try to recreate his family life. So they start doing, like, this weird play acting thing where they're trying to do, like, a Jewish household sitting around the table. And this inexplicably leads to him thinking about that he's Blanche from A Streetcar Named Desire. And then the rebel leader says to her, well, you've read that, just go with it. So then you have him acting, so then you have her joining him and basically reenacting a scene from A Streetcar Named Desire, with him playing the role of Blanche and her playing the role of Stan, heavily influenced, obviously, by Brando's performance of it from the 50s movie adaptation, and I don't know, it's pretty funny. I have to crack up watching that happen.
Yeah, I think that was one of the stronger comedic performances.
Yeah.
By Diane Keaton.
Yeah, Diane Keaton doing this outlandish imitation of Brando. Apparently, like, they had to do a bunch of retakes for the film because they both would crack up during it because it's just so bizarre and stuff. But so at this point, now that she's like this new sort of liberated version of herself, like he's developed feelings for her because she's not, you know, the little entitled snot she was. So he's really bothered by the fact that in her transformation, she's also accepted, again, this is timely for the 70s, the concept of free love. That's what she believes in. Although it seems like she already kind of believed in that beforehand. Yeah. I mean, they have that part where she and the socialites go swimming and stuff. She's like, "Oh, we could have had sex, but there weren't enough people."
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. By which I guess she just means, you know, we could have sex, but if you want to have proper, really good sex, you have to have at least this many people.
Well, yeah, that's what she says as soon as they come out. She says, "Well, it was okay, but it wasn't as good as last Saturday."
Yeah.
Immediately the downer. I don't know. She's just the type of person that is looking for anything different. She's so bored with her life. So.
Exactly. So maybe it isn't that surprising that she's had such a complete turnaround with the rebels, where she's just like, oh, okay, this is something new and different. I'll embrace it wholeheartedly. And again, you could say it still comes from a shallow place because the leader is this handsome guy that she's sort of taken with, and that's what he gets really upset about. And that leads to a lot of their bickering as they go for this final mission. Because coming back to the beginning, the whole reason that he was unfrozen and was going to be used by the rebellion against the government was because they were worried about something the government had going on called Project Ares. They didn't know what it was, but they thought it was big and important. They wanted to find out what it was and possibly stop it. And as we get on, we find out what Project Ares is, and it's as ridiculous as even more ridiculous as you might expect from the tone of the movie, and that's the fact that they found out that a few months ago, rebels had managed to actually assassinate their leader, their great leader, their big brother type, that he'd actually been blown up, but they'd hushed it up so nobody knew about it, and all that was left of him was his nose. And they were trying, in Project Ares, through the scientific method of cloning, they were going to hope that they could regrow him just from his nose, that they could bring their leader back to life. So that's what they wind up infiltrating, which is pretty funny, pretty goofy.
Did you see whose nose it was?
No, I didn't know it was anybody's nose in particular.
I saw it earlier. Thought it was, I'll go on, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay. Yeah, so they wind up infiltrating the area, and they're posing as doctors who are supposed to wind up, so they can get close to the nose, so they can steal it or destroy it, and and all the while they're bickering back and forth over him being annoyed with her for being taken with Erno, because he keeps pointing out, oh, this is Erno's plan. He's like, you only like him because he's handsome and all this stuff, and all his insecurity coming out and stuff, but, the same sorts of comedic stuff going on. They're walking along dressed as doctors thinking, okay, we're going to get out of this, and then they walk into a huge group of the people, and they're like, oh, come along with us, and they're like, yes, we're doctors, we're proper doctors, we're not imposters. Like lines like that. And then there's a little bit where there's a computer that's supposed to be like assisting them in AI, so we get a little nod to 2001, where we get a sort of a HAL-like computer talking to them, where they're trying to put on a little charade, trying to fool everybody, when they obviously have no idea what they're doing.
They were trying to clone.
Yeah, they're supposed to clone the nose and bring back the whole leader. And in the end, they just grab the nose and run. And that's the end of Project Ares, when turns out the gun they have isn't real, it's more like one of those Joker guns, bang, and they drop it, and just because these movies are like that, they just so happen to be right in front of a steamroller of all things, and the nose gets flattened out by the steamroller, because why not? And I don't know. Can you still clone something from a flattened nose? I don't know. This movie doesn't go into that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. But, yeah, as far as sheer absurdity, there's some other parts, too, that we didn't even mention. Like, while he's being brainwashed by the government when they first get him, there's a part where they enter him into the Miss America pageant, and he wins.
That was, the most absurd part of the whole movie.
Yeah, where he plays the role of Miss Montana, and winds up winning. Apparently, winning the Miss America pageant, it would help him be more, I don't know, docile or more suggestive to the brainwashing. I don't know. It's never explained, and that's fine. That's okay. We come to expect that sort of absurdness from such a film. But yeah, then it wraps up quite quickly after the destruction of the nose, where they're just basically making a clean getaway, which you could say, oh, is cheap, but it's not, because it's already been shown again and again that even though they're on top, this oppressive government is actually quite inept and bumbling and screwing things up all the time. So it's actually not too surprising that they get away from them, truth be told. And then they have, again, one of their many little conversations. We got, her lobbing various softballs at him so he could fire off some quick little jokes about them. And at one point, where he's saying about how it's stupid to like base their society on science anyway, and how empty and stupid science is. She's like, oh, I see. You don't believe in science. You don't believe the political systems work. You don't believe in God. So what do you believe in? And the final line says, sex and death, two things that come once in my lifetime. But at least after death, you're not nauseous. That's how the film ends, of all things. But yeah. What else we got here?
I watched the TCM intro and outro earlier.
Oh yeah.
And they said whose nose it was.
Oh.
Did not remember what they said. I want to say Tony Robbins, but I don't know if Tony Robbins is old enough for that to be.
It's a very large nose. I did notice that when they're in the gay couple's home and they have that like effeminate robot. The robot's name is Reagan.
That was fun.
Who would have been the governor of California at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I brought that up before because when we watched, or when we did Targets, I pointed out he was government because he was upset because Reagan later on, and particularly during his presidency, during Reagan's presidency, he was obviously, noted for support of the NRA. But if you go back to when he was governor of California, he was actually trying to enact some restrictions on guns because he was upset by the fact that the Black Panther Party was exploiting the law that they were allowed to carry guns around in public. So yeah. This is actually the second time I pointed out that he was governor around that time, late 60s, early 70s. And speaking of the NRA, they're one of the things that's quickly mentioned too. It's funny, they say, well, what is... when they find the old Volkswagen, and there's like a weird bumper sticker on it, it said something about, like, I don't know, commies and stuff, and gun, or something like that.
Ban guns, not... No.
Yeah,
registered commies, not guns.
That's it, registered commies, not guns. She said he was probably a member of the NRA, and she's like, what's that? She's like, oh, they were a group that went around giving guns to criminals so they could shoot citizens. It was a public service. Which, it still lands today, I think.
Yeah. Well, even more so, I think.
Yeah, now, yeah, especially with all these shootings and stuff going on that we hear about. Yeah, I think that's one of the funnier lines in it. And sometimes she knows he's joking, and sometimes she doesn't, which is funny too. Like at one point, she's like, "Oh, you're making fun of me," but there's other times where like she has no idea, and she just like completely takes his word for it, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, he has a lot of fun with a few people in the film, just like totally making shit up about what happened.
Yeah, and I think I mean, you never know, obviously, but he's a character I can relate to on that scale because I think I would be kind of similar in the same way.
Sure.
That I would kind of have like a laissez-faire attitude if I woke up in some weird future society, because I figured I'm already like sort of cheated death, and I'm just sort of on extra borrowed time, so I might as well screw around and have fun with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could like see myself like having sort of a similar attitude that he has. But yeah, it was Love and Death that followed it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So there you go. Like the final line of the movie is kind of like some sort of like setup for the next one, where he's talking about like sex and death. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Don't know how intentional that really was, but it kind of works as a neat setup. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. One of the things that I'll criticize movies for, and I think you're with me on this, is that we'll often talk about how like nowadays when a film comes out, it's like, or when you're trying to pitch a film to a studio, it seems nobody wants anything original, right? It's like what they usually want is like a combination of things. They want to hear you be like, they're like, okay, what you got? And you'd be like, well, it's like Jurassic Park meets Fast and the Furious, and they're like, okay, I'm on board. Like, you have to give them like something, and then because if you try to describe something like completely original, they're like, well, what is that? Who's gonna go see that? But I mean, this movie basically to me is like Charlie Chaplin meets 1984, and it sounds cool, and it is cool, and I really respect it for that, because I don't know if it's something anybody else could have like really come up with.
No, I think They originally intended this film to be 3 hours long,
Oh God.
and I think they rejected it because they wanted to spend more time in the present day or like current time.
Oh
And
no, I like that they just wake up like right in the future.
Sure.
I think that's
It
the way
is
to
awfully
go.
short though. I mean, it's like an hour. What,
87
minutes?
minutes. It's like 87 minutes. Yeah.
It's quite short.
I think that's to its credit, because like we said, sometimes it has some very serious themes, but I like that it just sort of whips past them. It doesn't get stuck pontificating. So maybe a longer cut would have done that, where you would think it would just get bogged down or repetitive or something like that. I mean, we'll never know. Maybe it would have been a masterpiece. I don't know.
I think a lot of comedies are too long. So
sure. What's interesting is like most comedies like don't have much plot, so it's kind of annoying when they are long. It's just like you're stretching out something out that doesn't even have plot. Like I remember watching like the second Ron Burgundy movie. It doesn't even have like much of a plot, and yet it goes on way too long. You're like, what are you even doing?
Yeah.
But this movie actually sort of has a lot of plot, and yet manages to like condense it all quite effectively. So that's another thing I like about it. Truth be told.
Yeah, this is kind of off topic, but that what's the movie that's coming out that's about the war?
Which war?
Duesenberg, some shit like that. Damn it, I can't remember.
Oh, okay, I'm not sure.
It's like an epic movie that is.
Yeah.
And someone said, it's kind of bizarre that the new Transformers movie is longer than that movie. It's, I want to say it's about World War II.
Yeah, probably.
Um,
There'll be plenty of those.
but Transformers is like 2.5 hours. Dunkirk.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I even saw a preview for that in theaters. That's right, Dunkirk.
Which, looks really good, but, that's a movie you would expect to be 2.5, 3 hours long.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm not surprised the new Transformers is super long, because the last one, Age of Extinction, was super long. I actually saw that in theaters. It's hard to believe.
Did you?
It's true.
Wow.
Yep. I guess I knew what I was in for. It's not like I could say, it's the fourth one. I don't know. I guess I saw it to see something, more or less.
Dunkirk is an hour 47 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's not really long at all.
The last night is 2 hours 29 minutes.
Yeah. Trying to find who had the nose, because I did find out when they were using the pictures of our leader, it's actually Timothy Leary, which is pretty funny.
Timothy Leary,
like,
okay. I don't know why.
Oh, that's the nose too? Okay, well that's pretty funny.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty far off from Tony Robbins.
Right.
But yeah, pretty kind of clever using Timothy Leary because he's the opposite of that, right? He's like the lead. He's the leader, all right. He's the leader of counterculture. He's the guy who's always on LSD and raging against the machine. So it's kind of clever making him, just sort of a little ironic twist they do in there when they make him do that. Yeah, a few other little cameos going on there. I'm trying to find them.
I don't know if we mentioned.
Oh yeah, Jackie Mason doing his like very Jewish voice when it's the robot tailor or whatever it is, where they're trying to get him new clothes and stuff. Yeah, it's Jackie Mason.
I don't know if we mentioned John Beck is the other love interest slash rebel
right,
leader.
The rebel leader. Yeah.
And Erno, does that sound right?
Yes,
Erno's
that's right. Yeah. This is actually really before Jeff Beck was known. It was Dallas that kind of made him a star, wasn't it? Yeah. So, it's kind of cool. I never saw Dallas, but I knew he was on.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of cool little asides going on. Just looking at some stuff. But yeah, just for all the stuff it mixes together, I think it's pretty ambitious, and I think it carries it off really well. Like I said, if you're trying to describe like Chaplin meets 1984, where you'd be like, is that even possible? But it's carried off pretty darn well. And like I said, it moves at a pretty brisk pace, even to the point where it feels a little short, where maybe even it could have even been a little longer and still would have felt tight, probably. I know we posted a little trailer for it, which apparently has footage that was cut out. I wonder why they did cut it out.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes you wonder.
But the film was, really well received in its day too, and helped his rise as like a very prominent figure in Hollywood. Pretty well reviewed. New York Times, Roger Ebert, liking it quite a little bit. I think it made another one of AFI's lists or something like that, and
it's on the 1001 movies to see before you die. I know that.
Okay, there you go. But, and even though it's a comedy, it still stands out as a good example of, like, 1970s sci-fi, too, and, like, just some of the stuff, just the visual style and stuff like that. All those anarchisms that, of course, they couldn't properly predict. We keep seeing these movies about the future where, for some reason, stuff is still very analog. There's lots of dials and switches, and those turning things and stuff like that. Stuff is still very blocky, as opposed to slim and sleek and stuff, so a good snapshot of that sort of aesthetic that would last throughout the 70s, really, last until basically the mid-80s, I'd say. Trying to think of other stuff that would show future or stuff like that, yeah, sort of mid-80s.
I think original Star Trek.
And
robots.
Really, to change the whole visual style for, like, a sci-fi film or something set in the future, it was basically the same until you got to, say, Blade Runner. Then everything just copied Blade Runner for, like, 30 years.
Sure.
But until then, the 70s, you just sort of had sort of really blocky and analog stuff. But then you also had blacks and whites.
Yeah.
That's, like, in all the other movies, too, basically. Again, the best example being THX 1138, where you've got all the normal people, the citizens wearing white, but then all the authoritative figures wearing black. Same thing here. All like the cops or military, wherever they are, they're all wearing black. Although I think there's some special red guys too.
Yeah, there's some red.
So they mix it up a little bit, but still just like solid colors. And cars that have like big like bubble canopies and stuff like that. But, I'm not a huge Woody Allen fan either, but as I've gotten older, I've appreciated him more. Actually, there's still some of his, like, most notable movies, like, that he's known for that I haven't even seen, so I would like to get to that. But as it stands right now, this is one of my favorites by him. I think it has a lot of originality to it. I like it's really sort of the fact that, as I said, it can balance sort of some very sort of serious themes with a really cool, lighthearted tone. I think that's cool and probably not too easy to carry off.
Yeah, this is, I think, his only sci-fi film to ever do as well.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Pretty much all his films besides that are contemporary, or perhaps like a period piece from a little earlier, I think. But, yeah. So it stands out sort of as an oddity amongst his films in a lot of ways, too. So I'm not sure what led to him wanting to do a sci-fi film.
Have you seen Midnight in Paris?
Yes, I've seen that. I thought that was quite good. That's one of his more recent ones. That's from the last decade. Yeah, that's a fun one.
Won an Oscar for that, didn't it?
Yeah, very quietly. Like, no one seemed to notice, even though it won an Oscar.
Was it for Best Picture?
No. Something else. I guess it was one of the lesser ones, which makes sense.
Yeah, it was a good film. You don't really hear it talked about at all anymore.
Which is another reason why I wanted to choose it for this one, because, I mean, using Woody Allen for New Hollywood, well, that made sense. He is one of the prominent figures in it, particularly comedy. And so there were definitely a few from the 70s that would have been easy to use. I thought this was sort of neat, because I don't know if as many people are familiar with it. And again, because it straddles some genres, I think it's cool. What are you talking about, cat? Got my cat talking to me.
Yeah, I always remember the VHS box of it because it was him with the robot face, with the speaker,
Yeah.
like he was holding the speaker in his mouth. Really, really odd.
Yeah. Some decent physical comedy there too, where he's like shuffling around like one of those robots. And again, this is before R2D2 did it, so
I think that's.
I'm not gonna say that's a huge deal, but obviously R2D2 must have been heavily influenced by these Butler robots because he looks a lot like them, he moves a lot like them,
Yeah, I think that. I mean, that makes the movie right there. Him as the robot.
Yeah, and it's only kind of a short period too. It's not very long. It's pretty funny too when he finally escapes, like because she brings him in thinking he's defective, and they're just like, oh, he needs a new head, and you immediately like see the room, and we're just like, can you fix the head? And there's this guy with this big hammer, like literally just smashing their heads. And then in one of the we didn't really because there's not too much analysis going on there, but in one of the the silent film action scenes, or whatever you want to call it, when he's trying to escape and he's being accosted by like this large, powerful security guard. It's like, how can he stop him? And he subdues him with a wheel of blue cheese.
Yeah.
He holds like blue cheese over his face, and the guy just sort of like passes out from it. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but okay.
That's futuristic blue cheese. Who knows?
I think my favorite movie of his is Crimes and Misdemeanors. That's 89.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And I'm also one of those people that doesn't hate Purple Rose of Cairo. That was like maybe his first like huge miss. This Purple Rose of Cairo. I kind of like that film. But I can see why people had problems with it though, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we also see the pattern too that would reflect his love life, where he would move on from Diane Keaton to Mia Farrow and eventually Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. Yeah. He stays the same age and the girls keep getting younger.
Yeah. That's the way to go. But of the Scarlett Johansson films, I do like Scoop. There's nothing great in there, but I enjoy it. That's where he plays like a magician. She's like a reporter. Hugh Jackman's a socialite who may or may not be a serial killer. Like, it's not amazing, but I like that one. I liked it better than Wimbledon, which was one of the ones for the same period, which was just more straightforward. That wasn't even really a comedy. Wimbledon, that was just
Wimbledon or Match Point?
Oh yeah, it's Match Point. Sorry, I get Match Point and Wimbledon mixed up because they're both romances with tennis.
Okay, I didn't know if he had done another tennis movie.
Yeah, no. But they're only a few years apart, I guess, and they're both about tennis players falling in love. But you're right, Match Point is his, not Wimbledon.
Kirsten Dunst, is that who was in that one?
Match Point? That's a good question. Let me check. No, that's Scarlett Johansson as well.
Oh, Scarlett Johansson again.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that maybe Kirsten Dunst is in Wimbledon. That's I know that's with Paul Bettany. I know Paul Bettany's the guy in that. But yes, yeah. So Scarlett Johansson did a handful of his movies too, but I didn't see all of Match Point. I saw some of it.
Yeah, I've seen pieces of it as well.
I heard it was pretty flat.
I did like Cassandra's Dream. I don't know if you saw that one.
I have not seen that one. What era is that from? I don't even know how old that is.
New, 2007.
Oh, it's a newer one.
Somebody recommended that to me because, modern day Woody Allen's not something you're going to go run out to see, generally. But,
right. But Midnight in Paris and Blue Jasmine are both good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To Rome with Love came out in between that. I haven't seen that. It has a cast I like, but...
But, yeah, Cassandra's Dream is a crime drama, which he doesn't do too many of those.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'd probably like it then, because, I mean, that's kind of like what I like about Crimes and Misdemeanors, that it's a little bit of crime, it's a little darker.
I like Whatever Works. I like Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Yeah. But what kind of surprised me with Scoop in 2006 was, like, he still had some really good just the lines of his own. Like, you would think that by this time his shtick would have, like, worn off and he couldn't find them. He still has some really cool, funny lines in that. I mean, and again, going back to what I said about not necessarily being clever, but just sort of having the right line, there's this part where he's at this really fancy party in Scoop where basically she got them in, lied their way in. So he's lying about who he is, and he's got all these rich people around him and stuff, and they're all interested in talking to him. And they're just like, oh, not to get too personal, but what's your religion? And he's just like, oh, I converted to narcissism, or something like that. Which I thought was, again, it's on the nose, but it's still funny. I like it.
Yeah.
He's just got a way of delivering some of those lines. Just going back to this movie, one of my favorite lines is when he near the beginning, where they're first telling him how they're going to like use him to help the revolution and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm not the hero type. I was beaten up by Quakers." I love that. Another big one that a lot of people seem to hate was because it was especially ambitious because it was musical was Everyone Says I Love You. I kind of like that one too.
I haven't seen that one.
That was sort of like during his low point too. That's like mid '90s when like nobody gave a shit about him.
I haven't. I've seen Deconstructing Harry, which I like a lot, but I haven't seen the majority of those films from that decade.
No, me neither.
It was Mighty Aphrodite. I've seen that.
No.
I didn't like it, but I've seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
Shadows and Fog. I've seen that.
No, never seen that. I mean, here's a huge one. Here's one of the big ones. Interiors. That's one of his best ones. Never seen it.
Me either.
And, I really want to see Stardust Memories for some reason.
You've seen a Midsummer Night's Sex comedy, right?
I did, but to tell you the truth, I barely remember it. I can't remember really anything about it.
It's a funny one.
Yeah, it's just been too long. Like, I don't mean it's forgettable. I just mean it's been too long. I can't remember it. But yeah, as far as like the whole sex comedy thing goes, he's kind of one of the pioneers. I mean, it just starts with little things like not a bunch of nudity and stuff like that, but just people even talking about it. Like we said, it wasn't until really the '80s that genre kind of got going, or subgenre, whatever you want to call it. And I think he was sort of leading us down the path to it. As I said, was just some of his honesty in bringing, sex and people talking about sex into movies, which were usually, if that was done, it was because it was the whole point of the movie, or otherwise they would just sort of ignore it. I like that he, had characters that were just, relate things to sex, or, because a lot of us do that, and it was sort of a taboo thing, and to a certain extent it still kind of is, depending upon, I guess, the audience, or the setting. But yeah, just in the vein of New Hollywood and how comedies were different and how they were evolving and stuff, he and Mel Brooks, I think, were the two big figures, and they both did similar things, but they also had things that made them very different too. I should have done a little bit more research so I could do a better explanation for how comedy had shifted during that time, because when I bring up elements that are in this movie, you can't say any of them are brand new, especially the slapstick. In fact, that's going way back. That's going back to the old Hollywood, the silent era. But at the same time, it's kind of a neat melange of some of those elements that you can take some of that really old-fashioned stuff and still mix it in with the more modern stuff where he's spoofing things and doing social commentary and stuff. So that in itself, at least, was new, even if it's not new things. It's sort of a new way of presenting them, I guess, is one way of putting it. Which really, I think, is the best a lot of us can hope to do. I mean, to be honest, if I ever can, get any of my work published, no one's going to ever say that I did anything spectacularly original. The best I can do is take stuff that I liked and present it in a way that is somewhat original. And, I mean, that's, at least I can be honest about it. And I don't think there's any harm in that. I mean, J.K. Rowling did a great job with Harry Potter, but all the core stuff in there's nothing original about it. It's the way she mixed it together. It's the way she presented it. Blah blah blah. So originality is becomes more and more elusive. It's never going to die or anything like that. But some of my very favorite movies, it's more the fact that they even sometimes blatantly take things and put them together in a way that I like. It's one reason why I'm hoping tomorrow. I was going to ask you. I think tomorrow I'm going to go see Baby Driver. And to me, Baby Driver just looks like a mix of a lot of already things I like, hopefully done well. So I'm really interested to see that. It's supposed to have some of that Walter Hill style, like in The Driver and stuff like that, and other elements. So I've heard good things, so I'm looking forward to it. So I think tomorrow, depending upon how tomorrow goes, I'm going to go check that out. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything new in a while, except for Wonder Woman.
I saw they come out at night.
Oh yeah, they come at night.
Here they come.
I saw the preview of that, and what I like about it is it doesn't give shit away. I watched the preview and I was like, I don't know what that is, so that's good. That's like a preview done right.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I see the preview and I don't feel like it's all ruined for me if I go see it. So yeah, I kind of like to see that because I mean it's harder and harder to get good horror to watch.
Yeah, I mean it was maybe a little misleading, but. Yeah, it's a good movie regardless. So.
Yeah, I don't even. It wasn't when I was I'm back home now, but I was in Sydney for almost the past month. It wasn't at any of the theaters, so it probably is here. I probably have more choice. I just haven't looked into it, so that's something I might consider too. But I'm a little psyched about Baby Driver.
Yeah, that should be good. I've heard good stuff, but.
Despite the presence of one Jamie Foxx, I can't help it. I've just never liked Jamie Foxx. I feel like he just has this pervading air of smugness to him, and that's basically why he gets cast, because those characters just have that smugness. Like, every one of his characters just seems so self-satisfied. Like, can't he ever do anything different? And he doesn't in this movie. And I don't mind, because that's the character that they called for, and again, that's probably why they cast him. But I'm just thinking, Jamie Foxx, can you do any characters that aren't just like, damn, I'm good, damn, I'm smooth? Like, that's like all his characters except for that one. The one time he didn't do it was a movie I really hate, even though a lot of people like, was the one with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Collateral. That's like the one time like he actually plays like a character that's not just full of himself. And yeah, I still don't like the movie, even though a lot of people do, and that's fine.
Is that a Michael Mann movie?
It feels like one. It probably is.
Yeah, I didn't care for that movie either.
I didn't care for it. So many people thought it was like, I don't know, some sort of coming out party for him, and they really wanted to praise Tom Cruise because it was such a different role for him, and his hair was grayer or some bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's it.
It's just like, wow. But that's how it is, though, right? We talk about a lot of these big stars, somebody like Tom Cruise, like, where they don't play characters anymore, so they just play, themselves in a movie. So I guess that's sort of what it was at this point. It's like, hey, Tom Cruise isn't playing Tom Cruise in this movie, so that's pretty interesting, Because God knows Tom Cruise is playing Tom Cruise in that Mummy movie. That's for sure.
Is he the Mummy?
No.
Got him.
The Mummy's actually a chick in that movie.
Oh, really?
Although I don't know. It looks like a mess.
Emotep or something like that?
Yeah, it's using some of the same names and stuff from the Mummy movies that Brendan Fraser was in. So,
I've heard it.
Even though it's got nothing to do with it. It just looks like a mess. I've seen two completely different 2.5 minute trailers for them, and it still looks wonky and weird, and I don't know. But it's got, Paint It Black going, so that's pretty...
That's a dead giveaway. How bad it is. I'm not. That's not what I want to see, man. I know they're trying to, reboot the Universal Monsters. So that's not the right way to do it. Spend $1 billion paying Tom Cruise to be in your movie, and now like Russell Crowe's gonna play the.
Yeah, he's in that one.
Dr. Jekyll or something like that.
Is he? That's kind of confusing because he's in the Mummy movie.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Must be somebody else, because Russell Crowe is in the Mummy movie.
I think he has another movie coming out, Russell Crowe.
Okay. But yeah, I don't think it's the right way to do the reboot either. And I think if you're gonna try to reboot and do it, like, I don't even think there's anything wrong, because a lot of people are like, like, now that they've got the Marvel U and stuff, everybody wants to copy it and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the shared universe if you do it right, so that's not my problem. I think you could do it. My problem is, they are looking at it the way we all look at all these things modern. It's like on a huge, massive, epic scale, big, big, big. I'm thinking, the old movies weren't. They were kind of low-key. Because they weren't about big effects and stuff like that. They were about atmosphere and that kind of stuff. And I mean, yes, within context, I understand that like the 1933 original King Kong was considered on a big scale. Yes, okay. Huge. But still, I think that they kind of want to overdo it now.
Well, they're spending too much money on something that doesn't need it, for one. But, I mean, those are relatively low-budget movies. Maybe not King Kong, but, a lot of the other...
Yeah, sure, like vampire movies, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, yeah, like, they weren't reliant on big, like, action scenes or car chases or whatever.
Yeah. They're more...
they were about
action.
Yeah.
Action type movies.
And that's the thing, because I think that's what they forget. Like, people think, yes, monster movies are spectacle to a certain degree, but they were still more about story and character than they were about things blowing up. And I think that's the main thing that they're missing there. I'm trying to see what's in my theaters right now. Cars 3, what do you do? I guess... You want to think about that.
It's
Cars...
a terrible summer.
Yeah.
It's a terrible summer.
Yeah. Unless the Pirates of the Caribbean movie's any good, I have no idea if it is. It doesn't seem like it will be. I haven't heard that it's great. Because that's the movie that could save the summer for some people.
I don't care about that. I don't care about Transformers.
Definitely don't care about Transformers.
I did want to see Wonder Woman, but I think I missed that.
It's a bit predictable, but it's good.
I missed Guardians.
You're fine not seeing Guardians. Guardians 2 is not bad, but, like, it's not as good as the first one.
Really? I wasn't the biggest fan of Guardians, to tell you the truth. But...
No. I'm too much of a snob, I guess, for the Guardians. Although, I think Guardians 3 I like because they're finally going to start tying them together the way I want them to. Like I said, I didn't like the second one because it was more of an aside. It's like, oh, here's some backstory for Peter Quill. It's like an aside movie, and then they'll come back to Thanos and that stuff. Like, there's no Thanos, there's no Kree. But it has an end. It has, in one of those ending scenes, they mention a character that gets me excited, so that's kind of cool.
Is it Howard the Duck again?
No, someone better. An important cosmic figure, if you know Cosmic Marvel, which, as I think I've said on here, was more of my blind spot for years. Like, I knew stuff, but I didn't. But as far as Marvel goes, I'm a big geek, a big. I know all the stuff, but if there's one segment of Marvel I don't know that well, it's the cosmic stuff. And I'd like to remedy that. I'd like to get some of it. But anyway, yeah, so one of the big characters of that, they mention him at the end of Guardians 2, that he'll show up in Guardians 3, which is pretty cool. And there's a huge clue I should have known throughout, but again, blind spot.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I am somewhat looking forward to seeing him in movie form, but yeah, you're not missing anything. I wouldn't say, like, never see it, but I don't think you're missing anything by not seeing it in theater, right? Like, yeah, see Guardians 2 sometimes down the line, but not, oh, you have to rush out and see it in theater? No, I don't think so. And probably the same thing with Wonder Woman, to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm glad Wonder Woman's the big phenomenon it is, but again, isn't that people politicizing it when it shouldn't be? Making it all about women or whatever when it's really not, or the fact, that there's people out there that want to, like, come down on it or ban it, because, they'll ban it because she's Israeli and stuff, which just shows what a sad world we live in, where we can just do that, but anyway.
I think that's just free press. I mean,
yeah.
It's
certainly not going to hurt it at the box office. Like, it's definitely the most successful movie so far.
But they played that right, unlike the Ghostbusters. Like they used that to their advantage in a positive way, I think, as far as box office goes.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, you didn't have anybody, like, bitching about the people that are bitching about it. Like, you didn't have Gal Gadot just said, oh, proud of this movie, happy for the response. She didn't say, hey, you people, blah, 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 fuck you. Like, she just ignored it. And that's, like, the better thing to do, right? There's always going to be people that don't like a movie or don't like this or that. There's no point in whining about them or, pointing them out or anything like that. Just focus on the positives. And that's what they seem to be doing with the Wonder Woman movie. They're not saying, oh, who are you people to say you don't like it? I mean...
Well, I'm not going to go see it because she's Israeli.
Screw those Israelis.
And she's female, so...
Deadly combination. Terrible. But yeah, it's a bit predictable, but it's good.
Sure.
my one note, I think I said before, is they go a little crazy on the slow-mo. They're a little in love with it. Like, pretty much every action sequence has, like, half of it in slow-mo. Which is... I mean, I get it. It's not like it doesn't look good, but you just get to a point where it keeps happening, and you're like, okay.
I mean... very, Zack Snyder-ish.
It's weird, because it's, you know, I'm the type of person that gets really anal about how, you know, you choreograph and edit fight scenes. In this movie is like both. It has like scenes where it does all that Zack Snyder stuff and stuff like that, where you're just like, I can't see anything, I can't tell what's going on, this is annoying. And then you have scenes where they do it completely right, and you're like, hey, this is good action, and it's well filmed, and I can see it. Like, the movie has both.
That's cool.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, 50-50 is not that bad. It's better than all wrong. So, yeah, it's a little bit hopeful.
Better than everything else DC's done lately.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I finally saw... I think I told you. I finally saw Suicide Squad.
What'd you think of that?
Just a huge missed opportunity. Like, a movie that could have been it could have been so fun and so cool. And they do, like, every possible mistake. They focus on the wrong things. They miscast terribly. You know, just everything is wrong in that movie, pretty much.
Well, Joker was hardly in it.
And yeah, like, a lot of people are complaining, like, oh, I don't like him as a Joker. I was fine with him as a Joker, and it turns out he's hardly in it anyway. Like, all these scenes, and they did shoot a bunch of scenes with him that apparently they cut, so I kind of don't blame him for being pissed about it.
But, I mean, there wasn't a lot for me to dislike, though. You know, there was a lot more other characters for me to dislike more than him.
Yeah, but I mean, by all rights, that should have been a really awesome movie. You know? It could have been it should have been for DC kind of what Guardians was for Marvel. It was the type of movie where people could, like, you know, more casual audience could get into and not worry as much about connectivity. I mean, it's there if you want to, but if you don't, you don't have to mind it. Like, it could have been like that, but it's not. And it's all dark and black, and you can't see anything half the time. And again, it focuses on the wrong things. The casting was really bad. Just
music is bad.
Music is bad. They're doing what they do in so many of these superhero movies, and Marvel's done some too, not the studios, but the other one, like Wolverine, where it's like, oh, a bunch of mooks. Like, nobody wants to see that. What makes these movies interesting is that it's not just a bunch of mooks, but yeah, they're just like, oh, let's have them mow down. And, like, why would they even need these guys if bullets work on some of it? Like, there's one part where they're, like, fighting all these things. It's like, it's shown that bullets work on them. It's like, you don't need the Suicide Squad then. Just have soldiers shoot them with bullets. So, and they have a character that negates the need for them anyway, even though it backfires in their face. Like, they're like, we need this special Suicide Squad. It's like, no, you already have this Enchantress. Just use her. She can do everything you need. You don't need to let Harley Quinn out. Letting Harley Quinn out is a really bad idea. You know. But anyway, that's giving more attention to it than it even deserves, to tell you the truth.
I bet Harley Quinn will get her own movie. Has that already been announced?
I wouldn't be too surprised. I mean, she's an amazing character, and I'm happy for the success and how it's probably lining Paul Dini's pockets. I mean, God knows he deserves it after all these years. He created her over 20-some years ago. Always been a great character. And, I mean, I'm happy to see her get her due and stuff, but yeah, if they are going to do a movie, it doesn't seem like the right way to go. The way it ends seems to suggest that, because it, like, ends with, like, a scene with her and the Joker, because he shows up for, like, 5 seconds again.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of branding, a lot of products with Harley Quinn on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my kids talk about Harley Quinn all the time. They barely know who it is, you know. And I don't know. I may have told you a couple months ago. I showed them the animated series when she was introduced.
Right.
So they got to watch the first appearance ever of her. So they would have a little bit of backstory.
Like I said, she's a tricky character too, right? Because it's just like, should your kids really like her? And it's like, oh, is it really that big deal? You know? Because I mean, because she is a bad guy, right? She does bad things and stuff. But at the same time, you don't want to be like, oh, you can't like bad guys. Sometimes the bad guys are the fun characters and stuff. Yeah. So you know, I don't know.
I always liked the bad guys.
Right.
Myself, I was
sure. It's all in good fun. Even a character as dark as the Joker is still all in good fun. You know, they're not writing these stories to bum us out.
But I mean, even Batman's not really a good guy, and the Frank Miller stuff.
Yeah. I like Frank Miller, I do, but yeah, I don't like what he does to a character like Batman, where he's just like, yeah, he's a sociopath.
He's a piece of shit.
He goes out of his
piece of shit.
Yeah, nobody's redeemable in Frank Miller. It's amazing, like, especially in the ultra-sensitive society we have nowadays, that, like, Frank Miller still manages to flourish when all his works are just so nihilistic and openly misogynistic and stuff. And the truth is, it's because people still like that. And it's not like I don't even like it, because, like I said, I read something like Sin City with all its misogyny. I don't think that makes me a misogynist. It just means I understand not to take it too seriously.
Right.
You know?
It's fiction.
It doesn't mean I hate women or think women are objects or anything like that. It just means I can read a story where they're kind of depicted that way and not flip out because I don't take it too seriously. And maybe it's too easy for me to say that, and some people say, well, yeah, but that all builds up. If eventually, people will think that's normal. I don't know. I still try to have faith in people that they can separate reality and fiction and all this stuff. Because, I do understand the side of the argument that, in fiction, if we have depictions of characters this way and blah, 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 that seems to dictate that it's okay in real life. And, I don't know, gray area for sure.
I picked up Frank Miller's RoboCop 1 and 2, and man, that stuff's awesome.
See, that's him in his wheelhouse for sure.
I'm a big fan of Frank Miller, always have been.
Yeah, like I said, I know the things he doesn't do well, but he does too, so he doesn't dwell on them too much. And I'll just always love him for what he did for Daredevil. His Daredevil just was one of the most significant things in shaping not just the character, but the Marvel U. Like the stuff he introduced was so great and cool that it inadvertently led to the creation of the Ninja Turtles. It was so good, which is kind of funny because you have to be popular first for anybody to spoof you. Speaking of spoofs, there's still so many people, and it's not like I knew this when I was a kid as a fan of the Ninja Turtles. That didn't realize the Ninja Turtles were made as the main influence for them was the parody of the Daredevil comics in the 80s. That was the main. Yeah, that's why the Foot Clan are called the Foot. It's a spoof of the hand.
Oh, I have heard that before.
Yeah. And the fact that they're like urban and in New York and all this stuff. Yeah, ninja. Yeah, it's that. It'd be nice to see good movies of those, because God knows those. I've never seen either of them all the way through, but I've seen bits and pieces of them. My God, they're stupid.
You mean the new ones?
Yeah, and one of my favorite characters is like Casey Jones, and he's so bad. Like it's like a reverse Casey Jones. Like he's all clean cut and everything. The whole point of Casey Jones is he's like a dirtbag,
Yeah.
And
what did you think of the was it 89? 89?
Oh, the first one.
Yeah.
90.
Was it 90? Okay.
Yeah. It does a lot of things right. It's probably of the movies, like not counting. The 2007 one. Most people forget about that one. It's probably the best one. The very first one. The second one tries, but by then it had been neutered, right?
It was 2, yeah.
Because people were like horrified by the violence of the first one. So by the second one, they don't even use their weapons. You have them like hitting the bad guys with like sausages and stuff. And like the most anticlimactic ending ever. It's like, oh, Shredder's all pumped up now. It's not just Shredder, it's Super Shredder. And he like kills himself by a dock collapsing.
Yeah.
Like that's terrible.
I like part 2. Don't get me wrong.
I like part 2. I can get a lot of joy still out of watching. But
I've got a lot of nostalgia love for it. But
right.
Part 1 is just a really good movie.
That's what I mean. You line them up back to back, and part 2 you just see is like neutered. Like all the edge is just taken out of it. And that's really too bad. You got Razor and Toka going, mommy, daddy, like, ugh.
Which, as an 11, 12-year-old, I really enjoyed. But
yeah, it's pretty funny.
Not now. Not as much now. But
it would have been so much better just to see Slash. It would have been awesome to see Slash.
Or Bebop like and Rocksteady. Why not put that in there? That's what they were going for anyway.
Yeah. They're actually portrayed mostly right in the movie they're in now, but it doesn't matter.
I was almost tempted to go see it, and I tried to watch the first one, and it was just mind-numbingly awful, and I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to watch it and then go see the second one, because I wanted to see Krang, I wanted to see Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah. The second one, like, takes everything that was wrong with the first one and, like, magnifies it again. And what's hilarious is how, like, when we first found out that, like, Megan Fox is going to be April, we're just like, oh, okay. You know, like, how sexualized is she going to be? She's really sexualized in the second one. Like, her whole opening scene is, like, her changing her outfit into, like, a schoolgirl outfit. Like, on the fly. She's trying to, like, I don't know, steal something from somebody, and she's trying to make a getaway so they don't see it. So she's, like, shoplifting clothes and changing on the fly until she's in, like, a schoolgirl outfit. You're like, nice, but what? Nice, but
could never pull off being a news reporter. She's not smart enough.
No, she is not. And she does, and it really doesn't come across that she could, you know, she comes across as, you know, dumb, bland. But, no, there's something else about the second one I was trying to remember. Oh, yeah, here's the other thing. What I said about Bebop and Rocksteady being portrayed right. But still, the fact, how they come out is so dumb. Like, it's one of those changes that, like, doesn't even, like, serve a purpose. And is, again, mind-numbingly stupid. Okay, so, in all the classic Turtles lore, what a mutant was a cross between a human and some animal. You have mutagen on you, and you, whatever animal was exposed to it combines with you, right? So Bebop and Rocksteady, I recall in the original cartoon, they are created when the Shredder sent some of those roadkill Rodneys to the zoo to take a rhino and a warthog to the Technodrome and then cross them with two street punks they had. And that's how they made them, and that's what the Turtles were. The Turtles were crossed with their... Although that's always a little muddy too, right? Because the Turtles didn't... There was no person they were based on. They were just turtles who became... And it's a little muddy. It's just like, well, they were with Splinter, so they got it from Splinter. Although Splinter himself turned into a rat. Like, even that's muddy. I get it, but still. Mutant. Okay, a mutant is a human. but it's explained in the second one, and I'm not kidding, that what the mutagen doesn't require exposure to any animal. It's that we all have potential to, like, be an animal... somewhere deep inside, locked in our genetic code already, or some bullshit. And the mutagen just brings it out. So they have Bebop Rocksteady, two like street punk humans, and they put the stuff on them, and they don't do anything, and then they just randomly, they don't know what they're going to turn into, but it's like, oh, I guess his inner animal was Rhino, and his inner animal was Warthog, or, like, it's so stupid. Like, again, we're dealing with, like, silly science fiction, kids fiction anyway, and yet they've taken it to a level that's even more unbelievable and stupid. And for no reason. Like, it's not like audiences aren't gonna buy this. It's like, oh, I've got an idea. This is a cool twist on it. Like, no, it's not. It's stupid. I can't come up with another word. I'm at a loss. My vocabulary is like, yeah, like, sometimes they change things in movies and it bothers me, and sometimes they change things in movies and it bothers me, but I kind of get why they felt they had to change it. This was just a useless change. Completely useless. We're taking a premise that's already pretty silly, and everybody's willing to accept because, you know, we like the Turtles. We're fine with the silly premise. Okay, that's fine, you know, suspension of disbelief, we're ready to go. But now let's, like, throw even more dumb, unbelievable shit into the mix for no reason. Like, I don't get it. But I wonder if they'll just keep making those movies like the Transformer movies. I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, that's also Michael Bay. That's also a beloved 80s franchise. They'll probably just keep making those, too.
Yeah. Is Michael Bay directing those? Just out of curiosity.
I think he directed the first one. Maybe he didn't direct the second. Let's find out for sure.
Because, you know, there's like 3 more of those Bad Boys movies coming out.
That seems a little late.
And I'm assuming he's directing those. He did direct the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, but no, he didn't direct the second. I guess he was just producer on the second. The second was a director named Dave Green, whoever the hell that is. Let's see who Dave Green is.
I'm sure he ghost directed those things.
Oh, more so. Oh, wow, Dave Green directed Earth to Echo.
Have you seen that?
No.
I've wanted to watch it.
Some, like, kids movie.
It's supposed to be like an E.T., playoff E.T. or something.
Yeah, it's something to do with, like, kids, like, communicating with aliens.
It looked like something I could watch with my kids, and it wouldn't totally...
Anyway, that's literally all he directed before Out of the Shadows. So those are his 2 movies. Earth to Echo and... So it's too early to judge him, I guess. We'll see what else he does, but... Yeah. You do get the feeling that, like, even if he was director on this, it was still the Michael Bay show.
Bad Boys for Life, 18. Bad Boys 4, 19.
Are they, like, gonna still have Will Smith and Martin Lawrence?
Can you imagine how much they're paying those two guys?
Isn't Martin Lawrence, like, 60 years old?
And
Maybe he's younger than I thought. I've completely lost track of Martin Lawrence. To tell you the truth, the first Bad Boys movie is the only thing I've ever liked him in my life ever. I don't like him in anything. I don't like him in stand-up, I don't like him in TV, I don't like him in movies. I thought he was okay in the first Bad Boys, and that's like it. He had that brief period. Yeah, I've seen Black Knight, I've seen Blue Streak, I've seen both those all the way through.
Nothing to lose?
I've seen Nothing to Lose. Isn't it weird how, like, there's a movie exactly like that? There's Nothing to Lose.
There's the one with Charlie Sheen and Chris Tucker.
Yeah, exactly. See, I get them mixed up. So there's Charlie Sheen and Chris Tucker, and then there's Martin Lawrence and Tim Robbins. Yeah, they're like the same movie, kind of. It's like, weird white-collar white guy gets mixed up in shenanigans with street-wise black guy. Like, I cannot separate them in my mind at all.
They both learn lessons from each other.
Aw, isn't that sweet? I've seen both, but it's been many, many, many years, and predictably, I did not see them as worth revisiting. Not that they were horrible. Like, I'm not going to say they were horrible or anything. Like, I can think of way worse movies, but, you know, they just sort of wash over you. You're like, okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of really dated humor, too.
I don't even remember.
Chris Tucker, man. I think I feel about Chris Tucker the way you do about Martin Lawrence.
Yeah.
That, high-pitched, whiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I could handle him for one Rush Hour movie. Then I did not want him for the others.
I didn't like the first Rush Hour.
I'm okay with the first Rush Hour. Well, that's how I feel about all three. I'm okay with all three. Like, none of them are bad. None of them are really good. You know, I'm happy for the success they had. It was nice for Jackie Chan to sort of have success doing like an American movie and stuff. You know, just because I'm a big fan of him.
Is it better than Shanghai Nights?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've seen.
And they made two of those too. Yep. They made one where they're in like England. Bringing us back to the original topic, Shanghai, the second Shanghai Nights or whatever it's called, Shanghai Noon or something like that, which takes place in London. It ends with them talking to a young Charlie Chaplin.
So, is it really?
That takes us around back to this movie. Yeah. They meet him on the street. He's like a kid at the time. And he's just like, I'm Charlie Chaplin, mate. And he's all cockney and stuff. And he's like, I'm going to be in film someday. Or some, you know.
That is a seamless segue back to
the original. Exactly. Back to Sleeper, which has many moments to tribute the great Charlie Chaplin. And a little bit of Buster Keaton, too, and Keystone Cops, and all that silent era stuff. A lot of which, you know, when we talk about stuff, it's amazing to think that stuff that old, that ancient by film standards, how good that stuff was, that so much of it does age to a point where, like, modern audiences can still get a kick out of it, you know. And it makes sense because Jackie Chan is a big film guy, like, and Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton were big heroes of his, and you would see those sorts of elements in so many of his movies. He really admired the physical stuff they did, and tried to bring their comedy into the martial arts he did, and did it very successfully. But yeah, that's one of the reasons. Another reason I like Jackie Chan, besides just the fact that he's, you know, such an amazing martial artist, stuntman, and stuff like that, was he's not just like even though he's made so many movies, and movies are obviously, oh, here's another paycheck. He was like a true student of film that really liked like a lot of the classics and stuff like that. Like, he put, like, his whole, like, career and reputation on the line just so he could make that movie Miracle. Right. Because he really wanted to do, like, a big sort of lavish musical-type period piece and stuff like that. And they're like, we don't want that from you, Jackie Chan. Come on. And he's just like, please let me do this. This means something to me. And it actually turned out to be a really cool movie.
Yeah.
Fairly hard to find, though. Good luck finding that to, like, watch.
I haven't seen it.
I saw it many years ago, and I would love to see it again, but it is fucking impossible to track down. Unless something's happened in the last few months that I'm not aware of. So maybe I'll look into that, because now talking about it makes me kind of want to watch it. The other thing is, it always, like a lot of his movies, they have like multiple titles. Miracle's the one I know it by, but it has like 3 or 4 other English titles. So it's very difficult. And anytime you look for Miracle, you just get like usually the hockey movie, which is a really good hockey movie. There's not a lot of hockey movies, and that's one of the good ones, but not what I'm looking for.
You know, one of the leads from that movie committed suicide recently.
The hockey one?
No, from Miracle. Yeah. The hockey Miracle.
Yeah. Kurt Russell. Obviously not Kurt Russell.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It was one of the younger players.
Oh, yeah. No, that's too bad. Well, yeah, a lot of them weren't actors, which is one of the reasons the movie worked. Like, they could play... A lot of them were players. Like, they could play.
He was in the... like, he did the movie, and then he went into the military. And, kind of unfortunate. He had a family and stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently struggling with some sort of mental illness.
So many are...
Jack O'Callahan is who he was in the movie.
Oh, okay. I remember who he is, exactly who he is, yeah.
Man Tenuto.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
Jack O'Callahan was one of the more prominent guys in the movie, as it turns out, so... Not to be confused with Rob McClanahan.
Is that another guy in the movie?
Yeah, it was another guy in Team USA, featured a guy named Jack O'Callahan and Rob McClanahan.
Wow.
Can't make that shit up, because it's the truth. Because that's what it means. Real life isn't as convenient with names. Whenever, you know, they make movies, they try their best to, like, make people have, like, names that aren't similar and stuff like that. Which I understand, but to a certain extent, it's less realistic. It's like, why would your group of friends, like, or all this group of, like, nobody has a similar name? Not just a repeating name, but a similar name? Stuff like that. I remember, I kind of get why they did it for, like, Game of Thrones, because there's already a ton of characters to keep track of, but, like, yeah, in Game of Thrones, I think we said, yeah, I think we even talked about it. I don't know how I brought it up in some way, but, yeah, Theon's sister, they changed her name, because I guess they thought it was, I can only figure, they thought it was too similar to the Wildling woman. There was the Wildling woman that hung out with Bran, and her name was Asha,
Right.
like, with an O. And Theon's sister in the book is Asha with an A. And there's even a point in the book where he reflects on how they have similar names. But they change her name to something else. Yara or something like that in the show. And I can only assume they did it because they're like, oh, that's going to confuse people. But I always thought it was a good thing to like have, if you have enough characters and stuff. Sometimes you need similar names or repeating names because that's more real world. You're going to say, real world? This isn't a real world. I know. But you know what I mean. Anyway. That didn't really deserve the little aside I did, but it is something I sometimes think about. It's like, yeah, in all these fictional worlds, everybody has completely different, distinct sounding names, where when you think, like, when you went to school, you probably knew multiple people with the same name, or people with similar names, stuff like that. You know, Ryan was only one of my friends named Ryan. He was my best Ryan, but I knew, like, 2 or 3 other Ryans at the time.
Oh, yeah. Popular name. I'm sure now there's, like, 17 Aidens in every class.
Oh, God.
Aidens and T-Rex and Tronomatic, whatever the fuck they're naming their kids these days.
I don't know.
Retarded bullshit.
I mean, it's true that if I love names. It's like, I don't want kids, but it's like the #1 thing I would love about having kids is actually to be able to name a human being. I would love that. I would pay couples to let me name their kids. I would love it. So I have all sorts of names thought out, and yeah, I mean, and part of it is, I'm not traditional. I would never repeat any of my family names. I told my parents, I said, I won't repeat a single name. I'll go back to your family tree and make sure that I don't repeat any of them. And I've got my own ideas, but still, they're not as weird and far out as, like, some, like, I just want, like, a sort of a name that stands on its own, but no, I'm not naming my kid Moonbeam or G-Unit.
What is, someone's got the one that's like, Sky Pilot or some shit like that, like,
oh, I've heard that.
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was, though.
It's not, Kevin Smith's got a weird, his daughter has a weird name. Her name's like Bottle Rocket or some shit.
Really?
But,
Is it really that weird? I know he named his daughter Harley after Harley Quinn.
oh, it's Harley Quinn Smith, that's what it is. No, it's not that weird.
Yeah, that's not that weird. Like, I can respect
Not now,
that.
it's not. Yeah, sure, it's an extremely popular name right now.
Yeah.
Spy. It's fucking weird, man. I'm telling you. I'm just trying to think of it because it's so weird. It's like DJ Spy Fighter or some shit.
Jesus. It's weird though too, because like often you'll read like about how like there's certain names you're just not allowed to name kids, and they'll like reject you. Like there were people that were trying to name their kids like numbers or fractions and stuff like that, and like judges were just like saying no, you can't do that. That's not legal. You cannot do that. And the other thing is like judges can step in and say you can't give a name that would like be detrimental to like the kid, because there was like a white supremacist couple who wanted to name their kid like Adolf Hitler Smith or something, and they weren't allowed to. And they were all freaking about how like their freedom was being stepped on, that they couldn't like name a kid a name that would like ruin his life forever.
I mean, I kind of agree with that though. I mean, you know, we gotta. I mean, I don't agree with the name, but I mean, you know, Adolf is a family name for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it was Adolf Hitler. Like,
and
it had
they're
Hitler.
white supremacist assholes, I know, but it's still.
But yeah, I mean, it is kind of sad. No, I don't think Adolf should be ruined. I mean, Joseph Stalin was a bad guy. Lots of people are called Joseph. You know.
It was Inspector Pilot, by the way, was the name.
That's really ridiculous.
And that's Jason Lee and whoever he had that baby with.
Yeah, that sucks. I enjoy Jason Lee, but he sounds like a weirdo in real life for sure, and he's a big Scientologist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or no.
It doesn't even
Pilot
sound
Inspector.
good. Oh, okay. Well, that's much better then. Okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, on the one hand, yeah, I'll attack like the people like naming their daughter Dakota. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? That's not nearly as bad as what else is out there. So maybe I should just shut up. Isn't it funny though to think that like, you know, once we get to a certain age, there's gonna be like nursing homes full of like Brittany's and Stephanie's and Tiffany's. Isn't that gonna blow your mind in a way? Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. I grew up going to nursing homes because of my grandmother and stuff like that, and they all had the old school names. My grandmother's name was Edith. She had a sister named Ethel. There was another aunt whose name was Beatrice, who we called Beatty, Aunt Beatty. You know, they're all completely of their time names, and that it just seems right. Now I'm thinking, yeah, like Brittany's gonna be, yeah, seeing Brittany with like white hair in a wheelchair. You know,
it's me, Ma Brittany.
Yeah, exactly. That's gonna be true though. It's gonna be like, oh, there's Grandma Tiffany with an eye.
Even that though, it'll be all the names from Ted. He'll name all the names from Ted.
Oh yeah, all the white trash names.
Yeah, but I mean, I would rather that than, you know, this is me, Ma, Inspector Pilot.
Yeah, that's true.
That shit's coming, man.
But you think maybe by the time that happens, it'll just be completely normal.
Yeah.
Nobody will bat an eye, because they'll all have names like that. Well, I'm Sergeant Major Dickwad.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ice caps will have melted by then, so it'll be fine.
Yeah. I know that celebrities have always named their kids weird things, so I can't really pick on any in particular, although I have to wonder if it's Frank Zappa's fault, if he didn't start the whole goddamn thing.
Dweezil? Is that one?
Yeah, Dweezil, one's like Moon Unit.
Moon Unit, that's right. Moon Unit's a girl, isn't it?
Yeah, so she'll often go by just Moon.
Yeah.
But it's Moon Unit.
Moon, I saw her in a movie the other day, I think.
Oh yeah?
I want to say she's an actress.
Yeah, she's done some stuff.
Yeah.
She was in National Lampoon's European Vacation. Although I have no idea who.
California Girl, whoever that is.
Of course, I don't remember that movie too well anyway. So yeah, Moon Unit, Zappa, she's 49 now. So, but yeah, Dweezil and Moon Unit. But yeah, that's what I mean. So like they're like in around their 50s. I'm thinking that like I kind of want to lay all this at his feet. I feel like he's kind of the originator of like, yeah. I mean, even like Michael Jackson, Kid Blanket, like that was just like a nickname. It wasn't actually his name. It's still fucking weird, but at least he doesn't have to like go to school or wherever and be like, I'm Blanket. I mean, I don't know. I know Michael Jackson was a loving father, but it must have been fucking weird to grow up calling yourself Blanket and having, like, masks on your face all the time. But that's a whole other thing.
Moon Unit gave birth to her first child at age 37, a daughter, Matilda Plum Dorset. Matilda Plum Boucher.
Yeah, it's kind of normal. Doesn't sound good, but it's kind of normal.
I'm just curious what she named her kids. I figured she went in the completely opposite direction. John.
Take that, Dad. His name is John.
He's normal as fuck.
Yeah.
He'll be the only John in his class. Surrounded by Robitussin and NyQuil and...
Yeah. Just, like, for, like, a few years, like, I, like, was aware of Coldplay. I thought they were an okay band. And then I started hearing shit about how, like, Chris Martin, like, was up his own ass and thought he was, like, a Bono and amazing and all this stuff. And I kind of believed it, and I kind of didn't think about it. And then he named his kid Apple, and I was like, yeah, that's all true for sure then. Like, that was my confirmation. I was like, yep, everything I've heard about him is true. He's just, like, a major douche who thinks he's, like, some sort of Jesus figure, and...
You got two really pretentious people that get together.
Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. What's funny is, like, she seemed to, like, get quieter when she married him. I remember she used to be a lot more self-righteous and, like, lecturing people, and then now she seems to have gotten quieter. Maybe I'm wrong, because I don't...
together anymore, are they?
I don't think so. No one ever stays together in that world.
And Coldplay is garbage now.
Yeah.
Or kind of always was, in my opinion. But...
I really liked their song Yellow, which was from, like, 2001. And then they had a weird sort of upswing, too, because all I know is, like, they had a really successful, like, second or third record, but not, like, massive global phenomenon record. And then, like, they were gonna play at some, like, award show, and then Justin Timberlake said, and now... the best band in the world, Coldplay, and I'm pretty sure that's what did it for them. Honestly, I think it was Justin Timberlake saying that they were the best band in the world, and people were like, okay, because it was sort of like an Oprah effect type thing. Because I mean, I don't know. It's not like I'm not influenced by celebrities, but I've never thought that like I should just do exactly what they say. I've never gone quite that far. But the truth is, a lot of people do. And the main reason I know that is because of Oprah. Like, Oprah just told people what to do, and they did it in droves. So it's not surprising to think that other celebrities couldn't have that effect too. And I'm almost positive that that's what Justin Timberlake did, because Justin Timberlake was sort of at the height of his own fame. And he was just like, these are the best band ever. And people were like, oh, Justin Timberlake likes these guys. They must be sick. And... yeah. Oh, and they had the, even though it's really overplayed, I did like the clock song, even though I realized, like, it got played so much that, like, you just probably wanted to smash clocks when you heard it. Because they would just play it everywhere, all over the place. I don't know, just had that very simple piano thing going for it. I liked it. But yeah, I couldn't give a shit about Coldplay or anything they've done for at least 10 years.
I was certain it had piano in it.
And I've completely bought into the pervading belief that Chris Martin's like an idiot. He said Apple Martin. It even sounds worse with the last name, Apple Martin. It almost sounds like it's some sort of Apple product. The Apple Martin. The Apple Martin 6.
Yeah.
This fall.
Got the Apple Martin, the Apple Martin Pro. S Pro. The S Pro Mini coming at you.
But yeah. But she was annoying when she thought, like, she knew all sorts of stuff about food. Because then she started lecturing people on, like, how they were supposed to make stuff and eat stuff and stuff. And that's when she got really insufferable. She's just like, oh, I have, like, a weird little side habit of cooking, so I can tell everybody how they should eat. Yeah, that's when she got annoying.
She did Shallow Hal and played the fat girl.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those movies where, like, yeah, it is a nice message, but it's just so, I don't know, on the nose. It probably offended more people than it helped. Because you had to have, like, people that were cast. It's like, you're cast because you're ugly. We need some people that are really ugly, and we're going to cast you and put you in that role so we can make a huge deal out of it.
I don't think they'd ever be able to make that movie now.
Yeah, they got divorced in 2015. And she's basically all she does now is do like Marvel movie cameos
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
because she's Pepper Potts. Apparently, she's going to be in the Spider-Man movie.
Oh, shocker.
Yeah, which I will go see. I'll go see that.
Yeah, so will a lot of other people.
Like I said, I mostly have faith in the Marvel Studios ones. I'm just happy that they finally have Spider-Man. They got him away from the other studios. But yeah, I mean, I was so down on those movies that I didn't even bother to see the last one, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I didn't even go. Which is good, because I did see it eventually, and it's a goddamn mess. And guess who's in it, smirking away and changing the character completely? Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx is Electro, isn't that weird? And I don't mean because he's black. I mean Jamie Foxx. That's just weird. And they did like the same cliche they've done like with a million supervillains in like movies, even though they hadn't done them in like comics since like the 50s. And that's like, oh, he's a really nerdy scientist and he can't talk to people and everything's weird. But then an accident happened and now he's all strong and confident. They even did that with Catwoman when that was never Catwoman's backstory. Remember that? In Batman Returns, Selena Kyle was all like, "Oh, I'm sorry, oh God," and then she like becomes Catwoman and she's all stripperific and awesome. Like, and then they did it again with Poison Ivy. I know you probably don't remember that because, like most people, you purged your mind of anything from Batman and Robin. But in Batman and Robin, she's just like this totally unattractive, wearing glasses, her hair's a big mess, botanist, and she's so scared of people, and then she nearly dies and gets her powers, and now she's a sex pot goddess, amazing thing.
Yeah.
And that was never her origin in the comics, but they just love doing that in movies. It's like, oh, look, we can stick glasses on these pretty actresses and frizz up their hair, pretend they're not good looking, and then make them awesome. I don't know. And they did this, and then they did the same thing with Jamie Foxx, except the male version. He was just like some like scientist. Yeah, he was like a nerd, and he had like a stutter and stuff, and he didn't know how to talk to people. But then became Electro, which was just basically electric Jamie Foxx.
Yep. Pretty typical stuff.
Anyway, I guess we should wrap since we got way far. I mean, we always do a little bit. That's people come to expect. We always go on to other stuff. But yeah. So we are just to let people know we are coming to an end on this new Hollywood thing. I think we probably have 2 more tops to do. We know exactly what we're going to end with, and we have something else in between coming up, and we will definitely get to that. Sorry about the hiccup last week. I'm back home now, so shouldn't be any problems there. Yeah, because we are going to move on to other things. Obviously, it's funny. I'm sure you probably the same thing as for you. Is like sometimes I've seen like what was on TCM, or I've just come across something online. I'm like, oh, that fits really well into New Hollywood. So we can always think of more that fit in and stuff like that. But we do eventually have to wrap up our series, so we're happy with it and proud of it so far. So I think we have 2 more. And then we will try something different. But obviously, that doesn't slam the door on movies from this era for the rest of the time. Obviously, we'll come back to them at some point, and we will touch on how they're new Hollywood, but we won't focus as much as we're doing right now. But once we finish up the series, we'll probably, try to distance ourselves a little bit, just, for the sake of mixing things up there. And we will let you know how that's going to go. If we'll just do some freestanding movies, or if we'll do another sort of series, etc. We will let you know down the line as we figure that out, as we never plan too far ahead. But as far as this one goes, yeah, we knew we definitely wanted to cover a comedy, and we'll sort of come down to if we're going to cover a comedy, probably be either Mel Brooks or him, Woody Allen. And obviously, there were several movies we could pick. I like the selection of this one, too. Not that I felt like we had to necessarily stick to the early 70s, just because that's where we've been. Annie Hall would have been okay, too, but, Annie Hall is it's arguably his most famous movie. Everybody sort of knows it. Even people who haven't seen it and don't know him know that movie. And I liked that this was sort of just when he was gaining some momentum, and I liked that this... he's got a huge filmography, and this movie still stands out as sort of unique among those. It's cool that it touches on the sci-fi. As we said, with 70s sci-fi, even though this is a spoof of it, it's still actually a good example of sort of the look and aesthetic of the genre until maybe Star Wars comes along and changes everything to a certain extent. There's even stuff in Star Wars that has a similar look to some of this earlier stuff. So yeah, from that standpoint, I thought it was also a good movie for that reason too. So yeah, so that's gonna wrap this one up, and I think we're gonna do two more. We definitely know our closer for New Hollywood, because as we said, we've talked about sort of the beginnings of it, and now we're here when we're in the mid-70s movies, so it's like, you know, it's at its apex, it's up and running. Like all eras, it had to come to an end and have sort of a bit of a decline, so we're going to try to focus on that with our last two, probably, and then we can get into some of the reasons why that things started to change, and not just because of the passage of years, but also some of the things that are actually happening in the industry, and we'll talk a little about that as well, and some of the events that led to the end of arguably film's greatest era, or at least its most transcendent era. I don't know. Its era maybe with the most innovation, perhaps, so far. Although, I guess that all of that's debatable. It's all debatable, sure. But thanks a lot for watching, guys, and if I'd done this properly, we'd probably be able to tell you now what next week is, but this time we'll get on it. We'll get on it a lot quicker, I promise. I got my shit together now. We'll get on it a lot quicker and give you a heads up for what next week will be. And, yeah, so until that time, thanks a lot for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned to the Twitter. We'll be announcing the next movie we're going to be discussing on there. So, yeah. Thanks for watching.
Alright, from the Pocket Dimension, I'm Cole, that's Jay. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.